Hi everyone, I'm Delia and you're watching Delia Cooks. Welcome to my kitchen. Today I'm going to be preparing vermicelli with chicken, and I'm using a boneless, skinless chicken breast. I'm also going to be using some bell pepper. Either you want green, yellow, red, whatever color, it doesn't matter. We're just going to use maybe a quarter of the bell pepper and 1 tomato, half an onion, some garlic. I've got about 3 cloves of garlic and 2 of these green onions. This is optional, you don't have to. The half of the yellow onion is going to be sufficient, but if you want extra flavor, you can add 2 of the green onions. I'm adding the 2 green onions only because I have some, and so yeah, that's why I'm using it. Also some tomato sauce, and I am using the no salt added because the chicken flavor bouillon will make up for the salt. So I am gonna add some of this for flavoring as well. So these are basically all the ingredients you need. You can also add some chicken broth if you have it. I don't, I forgot to buy it, but if you have it, use that. I am going to use water, which is not as flavorful, but this right here is going to give it the chicken flavor that I'm looking for, and usually you find in the chicken broth. So if you do have the chicken broth, just use the chicken broth, and also be aware of the salt in the chicken broth because this is salty and the chicken broth is salty. So taste it as you go along. If the recipe calls for a certain amount of this, you might want to reduce on the chicken broth, or reduce a little bit of this because the chicken broth is gonna add the additional salt. But just taste it as you go along. Or if you want to just get, what I would do, I would just get the unsalted or no sodium added to the chicken broth. So it's up to you. You make this recipe your own, however your preference is. It's all gonna turn out just as good. Now, real quick, this is the vermicelli. I bought 2 different kinds. Usually this is what you would see at the store most of the time. My Walmart carries a lot of the Hispanic products or Mexican products, and they also had this one. This one's called La Moderna, and this is a product from Mexico, I think. But they make it here in Texas though. But I think it derives from Mexico. But I'm going to use this one only because I prefer this one. This is a really, really thin vermicelli. So it doesn't take very long to cook. So I'm going to use this one simply because of that. It cooks a lot easier and faster. Well, not easier, but it cooks a lot faster. And I like the flavor of this one better than this one. But if this is all you have, this is just going to be just as delicious once you finish the recipe. So let's get started with the chopping and all the measure. Okay, I'm gonna start prepping the all the vegetables. I'm gonna chop my onions, my bell pepper, my garlic, my tomato. I'm only gonna use half an onion or maybe less. Maybe I'm gonna say maybe a quarter. It's just depends how oniony you want it, but I think maybe a quarter of an onion will be sufficient. I'm gonna use the whole half an onion. I think that's good enough. And then from there I'm gonna go ahead and do my bell peppers, or actually just 1 bell pepper. Probably do a quarter of the bell pepper as well. Moving on to the bell pepper, which I'm going to use a quarter as well. I'm going to cut all this out. And once again, I'm just going to cut it into small little squares. You can use any bell pepper. You can use the green, the red, the yellow. I'm using the orange. My favorite are the orange, the yellow, and then the red one, and then the green. It just depends. Sometimes I do want that strong, sharp flavor of the green one, but for the most part, the yellow and the orange are a lot sweeter and milder. Especially if you get a female bell pepper, it's gotta have 4 little bumps. If it's got 4 little bumps, it's a female. If it's got 3, it's a male. And the female is sweeter than the male is. So I always tend to look for the 4 little bumps. So I'm gonna put the bell pepper and the onions in the same little bowl because I'm gonna cook them at the same time. Now moving on to the garlic. I'm gonna use 3 cloves. If you feel 3 is too much for you, that's okay. You can use 2, you can use 1. It's to your liking, to your taste. I do like garlic a lot. And then once it's all sliced, I'm just gonna go ahead and chop it up. Just a rough chop, not. Once it's well cooked, it'll disintegrate into the chicken. And this vermicelli, if you've never made vermicelli, some people like it nice and soupy. Some people, I prefer it dry, more on the drier side. But my husband and my family, they like it soupy. I like it less soupy, but there's too many against one, so I usually just make it how they like it, and I just don't put, when I serve myself, I serve myself less of the broth and more of the vermicelli. So here's the garlic, and now I'm going to move on to the tomato. So tomato, same thing, almost the same size of chop, small little squares, just so that you won't have this big old chunks of tomato when you are eating the vermicelli. And I like my vegetables, when I make vermicelli, I like my vegetables nice and tender, because the vermicelli, it's, once it cooks, it's very soft, very tender, the pasta or noodles. And to have vegetables that they're not completely tender, I don't know, I don't like that. I like everything to be the same texture. So vermicelli is nice and soft. I want to make sure that my onions and bell peppers are nice and chopped. I think half of the tomato is going to be enough, so I'm not going to use the whole tomato. So let's move on to the chicken and start cooking the chicken and get this recipe going. Oh, I'm forgetting the onions, so let's do the onions next. Here we go. We're going to do the green onions because we already did the yellow onions. And this green onion right here, it's optional. You don't have to add it if you don't have it or you don't like it. Just leave it out. That's okay. We already have our yellow onion already all chopped up and ready to go. So this is optional. But like I said, I'm only adding it because I had it, and plus it's going to add that little extra flavoring to the vermicelli. So it's going to be added right here to this bowl where I have the other onion and my bell peppers all chopped up. So that is all the prepping that goes into this vermicelli chicken recipe. So let's move on to the stove and get this chicken going. So moving on to the stove, I'm gonna say probably about a teaspoon and a half of oil, olive oil. And if I feel that I need more, then I'll add a little bit more. But this is going to be for the chicken. that, by the way, I already cut up into small little pieces. And you can also add beef. I mean, you can do it with beef instead of chicken. If you prefer to do this vermicelli with beef, you can absolutely do it with beef. Just make sure you switch up the chicken flavored Knorr chicken broth to the beef one. This is a really delicious bouillon. Yeah, the beef bouillon by Knorr. So this is really, really good. So if you want to substitute the chicken for beef, go right ahead. It probably tastes better with like chunks of maybe like steak, thin steak. Not so much with the ground beef. I mean, you can if you want to, but I prefer to use maybe like thin steak, very thinly sliced steak, beef steak, versus the ground beef. The ground beef, I feel like it goes everywhere. So I'm gonna go ahead and add my chicken. As you can see, they're very small pieces. This is the one breast, boneless, skinless breast. I'm gonna lower my temperature to medium low. I have it like a medium high, so I'm gonna lower it to medium low. And I'm just gonna saute my chicken really, really quick. It doesn't take very long to cook. It doesn't cook quite fast. Now at this point, if you want to add salt and pepper, you can. Okay, you can add a little bit of pepper. And you can add some salt. I'm just going to flavor it with a little bit of that Knorr that I already have measured here. This is about a tablespoon of Knorr. So I'm just going to sprinkle some of this to give that chicken a little extra kick. So this is going to be added to the dish at the very, very end. The whole, whatever's left of it. Which is, I started with a tablespoon, so I still have some left, a lot left. So I'm just gonna let my chicken finish cooking a little bit more, and I'm gonna give it about another minute or two before we go on to the next step. I'm gonna let it cook. I'm gonna bring up my heat to medium. I had it at medium low. I'm just going to leave it at medium. Or I might even pick it up to medium high because I want it to cook with high heat. Okay, so I'm going to let it cook for about another minute or so, and we'll come back and check on it and see how it looks. So I've been cooking my chicken for about, I'm going to say about 2 minutes already. A total of 2 minutes. It's getting a little brown, golden brown, and that's what you're looking for. Just a little, just a hint of golden brown. Just golden. So to that, I'm just going to move it to the side, and to that, I'm going to go ahead and add my onions, my bell peppers. Because like I said, I want my vegetables to be nice and tender. I don't like to be chewing on the onions that are crispy and crunchy. Not with, I do like it, but not in this place. This particular dish, since the vermicelli is very tender and it's very thin, it's not going to take long to cook. So I need to make sure that the vegetables are cooked all the way through to where they're nice and tender, where you won't be able to notice the difference when you're eating a piece of onion or bell pepper, or if it's vermicelli, because the texture of the chicken is going to be the only thing you're going to be chewing on. I don't like to crunch on onions or bell peppers, not in this dish. So to that, I'm going to go ahead and add, I'm going to let it cook for a little bit. I'm going to set the temperature for medium high. This is smelling incredible. These onions and bell peppers gives this dish some life. I'm gonna add my garlic. And I'm just gonna let the garlic cook for about 30 seconds or so. I don't want it to burn either, but I want to cook the raw taste of the garlic off a little bit. Now to this vermicelli, you can also add potatoes. Just make sure you cut them to the size of the chicken so they can all cook at the same time. Be nice and tender. I love it with potatoes as well. Very, very delicious comfort food. This is a dish that I like to do a lot. Well, not a lot, like once a week. Maybe at least once a month. My husband's a big fan of the vermicelli with chicken and potatoes, and so delicious. But I'll do it once in a while, at least once a month or so. Change it up a little bit. We do like to eat more chicken than beef, but once in a while you do want the beef. So like I said, you can alternate or substitute the chicken for some nice thin steaks and cut it up into small little squares, and so it can cook faster too. So at this point, I think my garlic has finished cooking out all the raw taste of the garlic. So I'm going to add my half of a tomato, and I'm going to let it cook for about, I would say about 30 seconds to a minute, and keep going with this recipe. Okay, so the tomatoes are fully cooked. They cook for about, I'm going to say about a minute and a half or so. I'm going to remove this off the stove, and we're going to start with the vermicelli. Okay, so it is time to cook the vermicelli. Like I said, I'm going to use this one right here, the one in the bag. And I've got about 2 teaspoons of oil in here. You don't need a lot. Now this is a very important tip. Do not leave your vermicelli unattended, not even for a second, because this is going to cook really, really quick. And this is a real fine vermicelli, so it's going to brown super quick. So all you want is just to toast the vermicelli for a little bit, the raw vermicelli. And just keep moving the vermicelli around. Don't let it sit for too long, because it will burn on you. Especially this one. This is so thin, and that's why it won't take very long to cook. Maybe like 6 minutes, 4 minutes. But right now we're gonna brown it, and this is all we're gonna do right now is browning the vermicelli, and just keep stirring it because this is gonna brown really, really quick. I have it on medium low. You don't want to have it too high, because for sure it'll burn. So this is pretty much it. Just go ahead and keep stirring your vermicelli and keep stirring it. I'm gonna say for about another minute or so. Don't let it sit for too long. So I'm gonna let it brown for a minute and show you what it's looking like after a minute. So I added an additional 2 more cups of water, and the last thing I'm going to add is the 2 tablespoons of tomato sauce. And this is going to be for flavoring, of course, and to give it some color to the soup. So I'm going to let it cook. I'm going to cook it for about 2 minutes or so. And I'm going to go ahead and cover it up. And since the vermicelli is super thin, it's not going to take a whole lot of time to cook it. So I'm going to cover it up. I'm going to leave it on medium high, and I'll show you what the end result looks like. Here's the finished product, the chicken with the vermicelli, all done. let me just go ahead and plate it up, and I'll show you what it looks like once it's all. Here it is, you guys. The final dish right here. I served it 2 different ways. This is how my family usually likes it, soupy like this, and this is how I usually like it, a little bit drier, not so much liquid. And I like to serve it with some whole pinto beans on the side. The combination of the beans and the vermicelli is absolutely delicious. And this is the soupy one. They're both just as delicious, but I prefer it with less, unless it's a cold winter night or something like that where you want something to warm you from the inside out, then this is good for me too. So here you go. I'm gonna take a quick taste, and hope I don't burn my mouth. Oh my god, it's so good. With potatoes, it's also very, very delicious. My favorite, right here. So this is the end of the recipe. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to go check out Deliasdealz, where I have my Dollar Tree hauls every day. But if you like this dish or you've made it before, let me know in the comments. And if you try it, also if you try making it and you like it, also let me know. So until the next recipe, you guys, I'll see you later. Take care. Bye, everyone.